Ladies and gentlemen, Brenton Vanstone.
A guy called George Hessel, I don't know who he was, he said that the human brain starts working the moment you are born and never stops until you stand to speak up in public. So, yeah, I'm just a mayor of a small city of 13,500 people, and I'm from the small end of town, but I think I've got a big story to tell. And just like to thank Julian. It was a great pleasure to meet you at the Broken Hill Symposium, and the welcome that you have afforded me has just been fantastic. We have a bit of a running joke that he thinks I look like Rod Stewart, and I think he looks like Mark Gable, the lead singer of the Choir Boys. And the Choir Boys have got a gig on in a couple of days' time, but my PA won't let me go. That's up at Newcastle. So, but thank you for your welcome and your hospitality, Julian. Also like to acknowledge Trevor Sykes, the patron of the Sydney Mining Club, the doyen of Australia's financial commentators, and I believe that Tony Abbott used to once work for him. So there's the true realisation that the man who's controlling Australia may well be at this table. And so our political direction and economic future may well lie with the directive of Trevor Sykes. So wonderful to have you here, Trevor. You may be Tony Abbott's Svengali. So anyway, and also Dr. Paul Hethersay, the Executive Director of Primary Industries and Regions in South Australia, a wonderful proponent of the mining industry and a wonderful advocate for South Australia and a good friend of mine. And he's here to act as the sweeper to mop up the dribble that I speak. But so anyway, distinguished guests, members and invited guests, as I said, it's indeed an honour to be at such a prestigious event, the Sydney Mining Club luncheon. An honour to be able to share the podium, like I said, with Dr. Paul Hethersay, the highly credentialed and experienced speaker. I just want to, all I can talk about is the transformation of a city, the transformation of an industry. And we've really got a good story to tell. Just the story of Port Pirie, with some 230 kilometres north of Adelaide. And just some of the history dating back. And after the discovery in 1883 of silver and lead in Broken Hill, a narrow gauge line was commenced from Broken Hill to Port Pirie in 1888. As a consequence, in 1889, the smelting activities also commenced in Port Pirie and has continued unabated for some 125 years. In 1915, the Port Pirie smelter became known as the Broken Hill Associated Smelter. By 1934, Port Pirie had the largest lead smelter in the world, and that remains this case until today. The smelter is now about to embark on a $514 million technological upgrade that will not only mean the transformation of an industry, but the transformation of a city. And when you realise that Nearstar, who incorporated in Belgium, head office in Zurich, have a market cap of 830 odd million, and yet they're spending 514, realises the importance of Nearstar in their structure, and Dr. Paul will talk more about that. I believe this does not only mean the economic consolidation of the city for the moment, but for the next 50 years. And there's not many regional cities around Australia can face the future by saying that they've got a certain future. This is an investment underpinned by a South Australian government guarantee for some $291 million, with a direct contribution by Nearstar of some $103 million, followed by a further contribution by Nearstar of $103 million, followed by $120 million through the forward sale of silver. This complex agreement between Nearstar and the South Australian Government was signed on Friday, the 16th of May 2014. On-site work commenced on Saturday, the 17th of May. The rejuvenation of the city began on Monday, the 19th of May. And I've had a car dealership who's recently re-established in the city said, since May, business has increased tenfold, and with supplying some of the major industries to the north. And so you can see what the power of underpinning, but there's a positivity that comes from investment. Thanks must also go to former General Manager Glenn Poynter, who persuaded the Nearstar board to pursue an advanced extractive process in Port Pirie and to once more focus on processing and not just the expansion of Nearstar's mining interests. Nearstar, as I said, incorporated in Belgium, head office in Zurich, has some 7,000 employees worldwide in Europe, the Americas, China and Australia. This is not just a lead smelter now, it's a unique polymetallic processing and recovery facility about to expand to beyond current production to high margin metals recovery. We believe that being a multi-metal facility gives, in the light of where raw commodities are at the moment, gives unique commercial advantage. Major construction work will begin early next year, with an advanced metal recovery and refining facility expected to be fully operational by the end of 2016. Some of the statistics, I think they're up there for you to read. Near-South production 2011, 195,000 tonnes of lead, 30,000 tonnes of zinc, 4,000 tonnes of copper cathode, over 50,000 tonnes of sulfuric acid, 18,000 plus troy ounces of silver, 36,000 troy ounces of gold. Also, Council has approved the construction of a 400-person temporary accommodation camp adjacent to the Beach Road Caravan Park. And with the ratification of the planning approval of the camp, building approval and the development approval, councils always have a long, drawn-out process. Contractors are being appointed as we speak, and I believe in the next fortnight you'll see 250 cabins start to be built there in stage one. And so it's exciting times. Port Pirie's been promised so many things. We've been promised brass plants, container plants, magnesium plants, and so a lot of the population there, like a lot of rural populations, is fairly jaundiced, and we've been led up to the altar and suddenly jilted and say, oh, our suitor has gone. And so I think that the city of Pirie will start to believe when the big top lance blast furnace is either unloaded off a ship or comes down the main street on a multi-axled semi-trailer. And I think people will be bowing and say, I believe. Council is overwhelmed with interest in this smelter upgrade, shown by accommodation providers, by catering, maintenance, construction firms, and a multiple of niche service suppliers. A busier smelter, a busier city, a busier port, a positive city, a city with a future. In relation to the smelter, the outdated process will be permanently decommissioned, and the old open function sinter plant will be replaced by a state-of-the-art oxygen-enriched bath smelting furnace. I think they've got a bit of dodgy up there. It's actually a vertical furnace, so just going to tilt her on her end. A potential, also there will be a oxygen-enriched bath smelting furnace coupled to an electricity cogeneration facility and a new sulfuric acid plant. A potential stage 2 would allow replacement of the existing blast furnace with a second bath smelting furnace, further improving process efficiency and significantly increasing emissions. This state-of-the-art technology will see the halving of emissions, and if anybody ever read The Australian, they've got a fetish for writing about how polluted Port Pirie is, and we've about had enough of it. And the fact is it's going to be about 0.4 micrograms per cubic metre of pollutant in the air compared to 0.2. I did notice they had concerns about benzene levels in a house in Pirie, but I didn't like to say in Martin Place in Sydney there was a building here which had twice the level. So, but we have been maligned by the media and savaged. Hard to attract professional people there. It's hard to attract industry when we've had to fight a misinformed media and some rampant people in academia who didn't know what they're talking about. There will also be full capture of sulphur dioxide and conversion to sulfuric acid. I'm a friend of the media. Reduction in potable water use to smelters is one of the top 4 uses in the state, and also will allow for a greater range of valuable metals to be recovered and produced. We expect to see a greater range of toll smelting, and what was the 4th busiest port in Australia in 1911 may well end up being the 2nd busiest port in South Australia in 2016. So, yeah, my little city. We're only 13,500 people. We'd fit in one of the streets here in Sydney, so it's a good story to tell. Council has also done in response scoping and feasibility studies on our airport, and the airport now has 24-hour card access to the on-site storage of avgas and jet fuel. We're working with UniSA in order to facilitate tertiary engineering studies in Port Pirie. We've done a definitive retail assessment. And this is the importance of a regional city. With Connor Holmes, we did an assessment. We found out that in that 100-kilometre range, 38% of people there used us as second retail option, 27% used us as first retail option. So my little city is playing a major part. We have money allocated to our entrances and to improve our recreational marine facilities. We've also completed a capacity and capability audit of our port with initial studies. Some government departments are fluffing around a bit, so we did our own. It indicates that the utilisation of barges, that Port Pirie could have an export capacity of 20 million tonnes per annum. There is increased interest in our port as access to our state's premier port, the Port of Adelaide, is becoming increasingly congested. And we see that with the shipment of raw agricultural and mineral commodity and an urban aggregation, the two are finding it hard to mix. Hence the need for deeper ports and port access in South Australia is now of paramount importance, and is inhibiting both the mineral resource and agricultural sector. Flinders Ports have a 99-year lease on 7 of the 10 commercial ports in South Australia and have contractual service agreements to the other 3. We need competition, we need independent ports to service South Australia's needs. We believe that with the advantage of being centrally located, having existing port infrastructure and being adjacent to the, can't get this thing to work, and being adjacent to the National Highway 1 and being located on the east-west and north-south rail line that traverse Australia, it's no wonder that Port Pirie is attracting much interest from not only the mineral resource sector, but also from retail, transport and logistics interests. Carpentaria Exploration have just announced, and this is in relation to their Horsens tenement near Broken Hill, a project joint venture that has secured port access for up to 12 million tonnes per annum of iron ore concentrate through the existing berths at Port Pirie, and has also been granted foundation customer status. Don't know what that carries with it. Foundation customer status, few freebies at McDonald's or something. But anyway, the agreement not only requires access to the port, but it will provide for the right option to increase the capacity of the port with great potential benefits for Port Pirie. Our existing port facilities, as I said, operated by Flinders Ports, and the port currently services about 100 Handymax-sized ships a year, and there's a 15-kilometre channel that leads into the city, and it's somewhat shallow, so about handy-sized ships is about our limit. And that puts out about 650,000 tonnes of cargo, including lead and zinc concentrates. The city of Port Pirie, as I said in its smelter, has been maligned by the media and by ill-informed and aimless academics as being a pollutant of the environment with a poisoned populace is now facing the future with certainty. The last 12 years, there's been no clinical acute symptoms of lead poisoning in Port Pirie. Yet around Australia, there's 1,600 deaths each year associated with vehicular emissions. So I say there's no one carking it in Port Pirie, so why prey on us? So we are a city that will have a robust economy, a clean air, and a community that's prepared to embrace positive change. So if anybody here wants to invest, we're open for business. And so the cloud of uncertainty that hung over the city, the sword of Damocles, is now gone. And the whole mantra of the city was, when's the smelter going to close? And so that cloud, that pall, has now been lifted. But at this time I must cast my mind to many communities around Australia that are seeing industries with more employees than Nearstar facing imminent closure. We are witnessing a national tragedy with so many employers and so many industries either closing down, sourcing product overseas or relocating overseas. This is an enduring sadness for me, being pro-Australian as I am. The impact reverberates through a community, and especially where there's only one major employer. And I indeed come from such a city where there's Nearstar, we're a one-trick pony, it's the biggest show in town. I know that Nearstar is Port Pirie and Port Pirie is Nearstar. 17% of the working populace work at Nearstar, with employment support following to at least another 2,500 people in the area. But with average export value of the smelter being $750 million, combined export value with the Hobart smelter is $1.4 billion, and tax generated of from the Pirie site alone of some $103 million. Plus we're paying $6 million in carbon tax. That was notice how the air's so much cleaner. And that was, it didn't have an environmental imperative, it had a political imperative. We're out of money, so how can we sanitise raising money? But up until the recent coalescing of mines, both in the federal upper and lower houses, that saw its recent removal. We are most pleased about that. Even council was paying $100,000 on their dump. So we see that Nearstar is not just of local importance, but is indeed of national importance. Also, just highlighting, as Julian mentioned, I know that the loss of Mitsubishi at Tonsley Park in Adelaide, the effect that had. And it's a tragedy to witness the demise of the Australian car industry. And I love the innovation, the creativity and the productivity of Australia. I hate seeing it go overseas. We can see, like in Elizabeth, with the youth unemployment purportedly being 44%, the GMH closure in 2017 will be catastrophic unless there's governmental intervention. And with similar effects no doubt to be witnessed at Geelong, home of the Ford Motor Company. We've had national summits for all the wrong reasons, and I believe that it's truly time for a national summit to look at the institutionalised impediments that are affecting Australian industry. The great innovative, inventive nation has built at one end a governmental bureaucracy and hence at the other end augmented and driven the decline of advanced manufacturing and processing and caused the easy option of allowing the export of raw agricultural and mineral resource without the value adding that should happen. The can-do country has become the can-not country. how fortunate we are in Port Pirie to see a very strong business case being proved that was then underwritten by the South Australian Government after long and complex and fragile negotiations that Dr Paul was involved with, that enabled the green light for the final investment decision. Quite simply, this project would not have gone ahead but for the actions of the South Australian Government and Premier Joe Weatherill in underwriting the project, which hopefully will see them not having to trigger direct financial support. At all times, we have courted government. I went to China with Minister Koutsantonis, the Minister for Resources and Mineral Resources and now Treasurer, and we advocated for Port Pirie. We defended Near Star. We were in the face of government. Government knew who we were, government knew where we were, and government at both state and federal level were made acutely aware of the importance of Port Pirie in the regional, state and indeed the national economy. I'm sure that this influenced the state government to undertake the $290 million underwriting facility. And what I've been saying to the media, anybody who attacks Port Pirie, say, you attack me, I attack you. They are the rules of engagement. So it's pretty simple. We were in China at the port of Tianjin, and as usual, like today, I've oversold Port Pirie, make it sound like an industrial mecca. And we were staying at the port of Tianjin, and they said it's a man-made port, some 107 square kilometres. And Koutsantonis, otherwise known as Turbo Tom, he had 50-odd traffic offences, so he's known as Turbo Tom. And he he prefers to drive, it's quicker than flying. But anyway, he said, like, it's 107 square kilometres, the port of Tianjin. He leans over to me and said, how big's the port of Pirie? And I said, 3.5 square kilometres. I lied. It ain't that big. But we just, it was great there to go with the government. But government knew where we were, and we were not to be denied. So industry, like I say, the importance of underwriting simply has not got the capital. And we've got this free market mantra that's flying around now. But we have witnessed what the power of governmental underwriting can do, along with some, I'll say it in English in a minute, strategic seed funding. As an aside, I said at a major conference recently, it was a bit of a throwaway line. I said they spent $2.5 billion on a home insulation scheme that saw 4 people die and 100 homes burnt down. I said, why not buy Ford and Holden and co-locate them to one place and put out Ford one week and Holden the next? Not as silly as a scheme that ostensibly didn't work. Governmental support is politically unpopular, but where the business case is found, then governments need to be aware that strategic underwriting and seed funding is a cheaper alternative than an explosion in welfare dependency with the accompanying decline in invention and innovation and education. Governments have also confused investment with consumption. Only some of the leisure, entertainment and lifestyle projects, better be careful coming from South Australia where they've built ovals and foreshore precincts, Dr Paul will take it back to government, have finished. What happens then? They need to invest in the economic drivers. We see 2 years ago 17 cranes that were on the horizon in Adelaide. They're not private projects but public works. The Civil Constructors Federation, I've heard them speak, and they've said that over 60% of their members in South Australia are either looking for work outside the state or looking to leave the state. So you can see the importance of a little city like mine that's kicking on. That's a serious thing when they say that. However, in my city, I spoke to the Corporate Communications Department of Near Star, and recently they said that they're inundated with investor and service provider inquiries. I see hoteliers, I see accommodation providers, I see bulky goods retailers, stevedores and miners coming to council inquiring how can they be part of the Near Star rejuvenation. And it's funny being mayor in a small city, but everybody knows it takes you 2 hours to walk down the street. All the kids run up and say, there's the mayor. We pronounce everything phonetically in South Australia. And I have been the butt of Mr Malnick's jokes, the rural-urban divide and all this sort of stuff. But I get people look at me, and they don't look at me as just being a mayor or a service provider. They look at you as being an economic saviour. And when anything is lost, we lost an abattoir, once 130 people just wiped out, and there was people on the doors of council knocking on the door saying, what was council doing? And so council has advocated for this, and we're so grateful for the government backing us up as well. But I see, like I said, hoteliers, accommodation providers, bulky goods retailers, stevedores and miners coming to council saying, how can they be part of the Near Star rejuvenation? The real estate agents, car dealers are receiving the financial benefits of what economic certainty brings. When there is economic growth, there comes a dynamic that you cannot write the script for. When there's economic growth, there's a dynamic that you cannot write the script for. I'm proud to be mayor of my little city. I know I'm in a big city. I'm just minuscule compared to you guys. but there's, just came here to tell you about a good story that's happening. In the city of Port Pirie, I'm proud to be its mayor, and I'm proud to be at a time when I witnessed the rebirth of a city, the transformation of an industry, the transformation of a city. Thank you.
Port Pirie has been identified as a strategic port solution to the expanding resources sector in South Australia. The city is ideally located in the upper Spencer Gulf region and only 2.5 hours north of the state's capital, Adelaide. The city boasts major regional health facilities, metal fabrication business, and a large range of mining support services. It has a thriving retail sector and a large range of cultural and recreational activities to choose from. Port Pirie's strong industrial history and access to quality infrastructure, such as an existing operating port and railway network, offers an abundance of opportunities for South Australia's mining sector. The Port Pirie Regional Council has identified a number of allotments of land east of the city, with easy access for a rail loop and close to the Pirie River that would be suitable for locating appropriate storage facilities. It is proposed to provide initially one large, covered and negatively pressured ore management shed, capable of storing up to 200,000 tonnes of product. The benefit of this proposal is that it is scalable, and there is ample room for additional sheds to cater for increased demand, and to allow separate sheds for multiple operators or mines. The proposed port solution will include a rail unloader with a conveyor system to the adjacent negative pressure storage shed. The material will be taken from the storage shed to the loading facility by way of a 1.2 kilometre long enclosed conveyor. The system will be designed to offer rain protection and minimise dust and noise to meet the latest environmental standards. The material will then be discharged into a shallow draft transhipper vessel that is fully covered. This transhipper will then steam out to a deep water anchorage point located approximately 20 nautical miles from the port. The product will then be loaded into a Cape-size vessel with no dust and no spillage. 2 of these transshipping vessels will be capable of handling a throughput in excess of 20 million tonnes per annum.
Cost-benefit analysis shows that